You don't deserve a dime, Dad. The house, the money, it should have gone straight to us. The words hit me like ice water, cold and sharp, spoken by my own son, Tyler, as the lawyer shuffled papers across the mahogany table in the downtown Chicago office. I froze, gripping the edge of the chair, the scent of polished wood and expensive cologne thick in the air. My daughter, Melissa, sat beside him, smirking like she had been waiting for this moment. Before I continue, if you're new here, please like, comment, and subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from. I had spent decades building a life of sacrifice and stability. My name is Robert Harris, a lifelong Chicagoan, mechanic turned small business owner, and father who had given everything to ensure Tyler and Melissa would never want for anything. I had poured my blood, sweat, and nights without sleep into the family home, my investments, and the business I had inherited from my own father. And now, standing in the law office, my children were telling me I was worthless. The lawyer, a calm man in a gray suit named Mr. Whitman, cleared his throat. Robert, your children are making their claims clear. However, you are also named as the primary heir in this will. Tyler, Melissa, your father's intentions are quite explicit. Tyler's laughter was sharp, cruel. Explicit? That old house? That measly inheritance? Come on. We're the ones who helped Mom keep things running. Dad's just old and sentimental. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to stay calm. For decades, I had been told to endure, to smile, to keep the peace. I had tolerated their tantrums, their disrespect, their constant demands. But now, something inside me shifted. The quiet fire that had kept me going through long nights and grueling weekends flared to life. I remembered every skipped vacation, every late-night repair session, every time I went without to make sure they had what they wanted. And now, they dared to call me unworthy. I leaned back in my chair, my voice calm but firm. You two have been mistaken your privileges for entitlement. Everything in this house, every investment, every penny of that account, is a result of years of hard work, not handouts or inheritance. And if you think this is about helping your mother or being owed something, you're wrong, Melissa scoffed. Dad, you've always been dramatic. Just admit you're bitter. I didn't flinch. Bitter? No, I'm clear-eyed. I've worked hard to provide for you, yes, but never at the expense of honesty and dignity. And the law and the will reflect that. The lawyer opened the document slowly, turning to the final pages. My heart thumped in my chest, not from fear but anticipation. Tyler and Melissa leaned forward, eyes glinting, expecting some cruel twist that would favor them. According to the final wishes of your late mother, Mr. Whitman began, the entirety of the Harris estate. This includes the family home, all financial accounts, the business, and additional investments is to remain in the sole possession of Robert Harris, with trust oversight to be determined by his discretion. The silence was thick, almost unbearable. Tyler's jaw dropped. Melissa's smirk vanished. You? What? Tyler's voice cracked. That's impossible. Mom said, I don't know what she said, I interrupted softly. But the will is very clear. This house, these investments, this legacy, they are mine to manage, and I intend to do so wisely. I could see it. The shock, the disbelief, the rage bubbling under their carefully constructed arrogance. They had assumed, like so many others, that entitlement would secure their inheritance. They had underestimated the man they were trying to belittle, the man who had quietly built everything from the ground up. As the lawyer handed me copies of the documents, I looked out the window at Lake Michigan glinting under the autumn sun. This city, my life's work, my sacrifices, it was all mine to safeguard. I had lost some moments, some years, to their selfishness. But now the balance had shifted. I could finally breathe, finally feel the peace that comes from knowing justice. In a quiet, lawful, undeniable way, had been done. And I knew this was only the beginning. Tyler and Melissa might have expected millions, but they were about to learn that wealth isn't the only inheritance worth claiming. Respect, dignity, and a life built on effort and integrity, those were priceless. The following morning, Tyler stormed into my office at the shop, fists clenched, face red. The sun glinted off his expensive watch, a stark reminder of his life of privilege, and his expensive loafers squeaked against the concrete floor as he paced. "You can't just take everything, Dad. Mom would have wanted us to—" "Stop right there," I said, my voice calm but firm, each word deliberate. "Don't use your mother as a weapon. You've been twisting her memory for years to justify your entitlement. The will is clear, and that's final. Now, leave the shop before you embarrass yourself further." He slammed his hand on the counter, the sound echoing like a gunshot. "This isn't fair. You're keeping everything? How can you do that to your own children?" I sighed, wiping grease from my hands with a rag. "I'm not keeping it from you. I'm honoring it. And perhaps one day, you'll understand that inheritance isn't about greed or expectation. It's about responsibility." Melissa appeared in the doorway, arms crossed, an expression of cold fury etched across her face. "Don't lecture them, Dad. This is war, and you just handed the first move to yourself." I turned to face her, feeling the weight of decades of betrayal and selfishness pressing down. "War? You think life is a game? I've endured your contempt, your insults, your constant demands. I've given everything to provide you both with security. And now, after years of disrespect, you dare call this a war. Remember, Melissa, a war fought on greed alone is already lost." She smirked, though it didn't reach her eyes. "You'll see, Dad. You can't keep this up. You'll regret making enemies of your own kids." The next week brought more subtle attacks. Tyler tried to sway a few of my longtime clients, calling them under the guise of family concerns and hinting that I was mismanaging assets. Melissa sent anonymous tips to local press outlets, suggesting I was hoarding money and hiding accounts. But every move they made backfired. Clients called me directly, trusting the history we shared rather than the lies of spoiled children. The newspapers that received Melissa's tips investigated quietly and ultimately confirmed that all accounts, all investments, and all business operations were handled with integrity. One particularly tense evening, I sat with my accountant, Harold, in the office, the smell of old leather and polished wood around us. Harold had managed our finances for decades and knew the precise value of every property, every stock, every retirement account. "Robert," he said carefully, "Tyler and Melissa are trying to push the envelope. They've asked me to authorize some transfers and even hinted at challenging the trust. Legally, everything is airtight, but emotionally, this is going to sting them hard." I nodded, sipping my coffee slowly. "Let it sting. They've spent years undermining me, dismissing every sacrifice I made. Now it's time they feel the weight of consequence." Harold chuckled softly. "You've been patient, Robert. Too patient, maybe. But now, it's like watching a master plan unfold." The tension escalated further at the first family meeting I called at the Harris estate. I invited Tyler and Melissa under the pretense of discussing estate management. Tyler leaned back in his chair, feigning casual indifference. "So, Dad, what's the plan? How do you intend to manage all this?" I smiled faintly, calm, collected. "Simple. I will ensure the estate thrives, as it should. I will protect the home, the investments, and every asset that sustains our family legacy. And I will do so wisely, without impulsive risk or entitlement-driven errors." Melissa's voice dripped with venom. "You think you can control everything? You're just going to sit on it while we rot?" I shook my head slowly. "No, I'm giving you the chance to learn the truth. Life doesn't hand out rewards for arrogance or entitlement. Respect, integrity, and hard work. That's what earns it. You've never understood that, but perhaps seeing it in action will teach you." That night, As I walked through the house, the smell of polished wood and old books comforting me, I realized that the next move had to be public, undeniable, and irreversible. Tyler and Melissa had underestimated the quiet strength of someone who had spent a lifetime building, protecting, and fighting for what was rightfully theirs. And they were about to learn that lessons can be taught without anger, with only truth and timing. I spent the next few days quietly preparing, reviewing every document, every account, every property deed. Tyler and Melissa were working hard to sow doubt, making phone calls, sending letters, whispering in the ears of family friends and distant relatives. But I had something far more powerful than whispers and threats: the truth. I began by calling in Harold, my accountant of 30 years. Harold, I need every account statement, every property deed, and every trust agreement prepared and ready for public review. We're going to show them the full picture, clearly and indisputably. Harold nodded, adjusting his glasses. Everything's in order, Robert. They've tried to poke holes, but you've covered every contingency. This is going to be airtight. Next, I started reaching out to the neighbors and town officials who had known my family for generations. Each call was calm, almost casual. Yes, I'm preparing the estate review, and I want to ensure everyone understands the family's intentions clearly. Nothing secretive, just the facts, properly documented. Word spread quickly, faster than I expected. By the time Tyler and Melissa realized I was organizing a full public review of the estate, it was already too late. The local press caught wind of it, and suddenly, the story wasn't just about a will. It was about justice, integrity, and the triumph of diligence over entitlement. On the morning of the estate review, the Harris estate was buzzing. Family friends, accountants, lawyers, and a few curious neighbors filled the grand living room. Tyler paced nervously, checking his phone repeatedly, while Melissa sat stiffly, arms crossed, eyes darting around the room. I entered calmly, feeling the familiar weight of authority settle over me. I didn't need to shout, plead, or threaten. My presence, steady and assured, spoke louder than any argument they could muster. I started with a simple overview. This estate has been built over decades. Every property, every investment, every asset you see here has been managed carefully and responsibly. The intention of the will is not to punish anyone, but to preserve and protect what has been earned through dedication, discipline, and hard work. Tyler tried to interrupt. Dad, I held up a hand. Please, Tyler. Let the facts speak for themselves. I then began presenting the accounts, the deeds, the trust agreements, showing clearly how everything was structured. Every misstep they had attempted, unauthorized calls, whispers to investors, hints of legal challenges, was already documented. And I revealed it calmly, without drama, letting the evidence expose their attempts to manipulate the system. The room grew quiet. Even the lawyer, Mr. Whitman, raised an eyebrow in approval. Tyler's face reddened, and Melissa's lips pressed into a thin line. I leaned slightly forward, voice calm, measured. This estate is not a game, nor is it a reward for entitlement. Tyler, Melissa, you may have assumed you were entitled to millions, but entitlement does not replace responsibility. Respect does not grow from arrogance, and inheritance is meaningless without the wisdom to uphold it. Tyler clenched his fists, shaking with anger. This isn't over, Dad. You can't just... I cut him off gently. It is over, Tyler. It has always been over. The will is clear. The estate belongs to me, to protect and preserve. Your actions have shown that you are not ready to handle it. And now, you've seen why. By the time the review ended, the outcome was undeniable. Tyler and Melissa had tried, failed, and exposed themselves as unprepared, reckless, and entitled. The neighbors and family friends whispered among themselves, nodding in understanding. The local press captured the story, emphasizing the clarity of Robert Harris's stewardship. and the collapse of his children's schemes. That night, I walked through the house alone, the smell of polished wood, leather, and old books comforting me. I had not needed to raise my voice, threaten, or humiliate. The truth had done all the work. Tyler and Melissa had expected millions, influence, and glory. But they had instead received a lesson in humility, respect, and consequence. I could finally sit back, breathe, and feel the quiet satisfaction of justice served, not with vengeance, but with clarity, patience, and integrity. The day of the final confrontation arrived, a formal estate meeting at the Harris mansion, attended by lawyers, accountants, family friends, and a handful of curious neighbors who had followed the saga. Tyler and Melissa had arrived early, dressed impeccably, trying to project control, but the tension in their shoulders betrayed their panic. I entered the room with calm authority, the faint scent of polish and leather following me, and took my place at the head of the table. For years, this house had been my sanctuary, my life's work, and now it would also be the stage for the truth to finally be seen. The lawyers began by reviewing the estate once more, confirming ownership, assets, and trusts. Tyler attempted to interject. "Dad, you can't just... You're taking everything." I raised a hand, my voice steady. "I am not taking anything, Tyler. I am following the law, honoring the will, and protecting the estate from mismanagement, something you've already proven you're incapable of." Melissa leaned forward, eyes flashing. "You can't do this. Mom's intent was different. She wanted us to..." I cut her off without anger, simply letting my words land. "The will is not a suggestion. It is a legal document, a reflection of trust and intent. Your assumptions, your interpretations, and your selfish desires have no bearing on what is real, what is legal, and what is just." Then I revealed the final piece, a meticulous log of every attempt Tyler and Melissa had made to undermine the estate. Calls to clients, letters to banks, attempts to influence lawyers, all of it documented and verified. The lawyers read through the evidence, nodding in acknowledgement, while the gathered neighbors murmured in disbelief. Tyler's face went pale. You've been tracking everything?" I nodded slowly. "Yes, not to punish, not to humiliate, but to preserve what has been earned, to protect the legacy my parents entrusted to me, and to ensure accountability. Every step you took to manipulate, deceive, or pressure, every one of them is recorded here." Melissa tried a last desperate move. "Then what about the trust? Can't we challenge it? You can't just..." One of the lawyers, firm and calm, interjected. "The trust and will are legally binding. Any attempt to contest without grounds will not only fail, but may also incur substantial legal consequences." The room fell silent. Tyler's fists clenched at the table. Melissa's lips were pressed tight, and both of them understood. They had been outmaneuvered at every turn. I leaned back, my eyes scanning the room. "You wanted millions, influence, and control. You tried to manipulate the system, betray trust, and undermine the foundation of this estate. And now, publicly, it is clear, you have failed. This estate will remain intact, and I will manage it with integrity, wisdom, and diligence." The neighbors whispered among themselves. Some patted my back quietly. Others nodded in silent respect. The lawyers finalized the documentation, cementing my control over the estate, the house, and all investments. Tyler and Melissa sat in stunned silence, stripped of the illusions of entitlement they had carried for so long. As I walked through the estate later that evening, the sun dipping behind Lake Michigan, the smell of polished wood, leather-bound books, and autumn air filled me with a rare sense of peace. My children had expected millions, but they had instead been confronted with the truth of their actions, and the consequences were undeniable. Tyler finally spoke, voice low and defeated. "Dad, I guess..." "I understand now." I looked at him, my expression calm, measured. Understanding comes with time, Tyler. Perhaps one day you will earn the right to respect and trust, but it cannot be demanded, and it cannot be forced. That lesson you will carry with you longer than any inheritance. Melissa said nothing. She simply left, head down, and the door clicked shut behind her. The poetic justice of the situation was complete. Their arrogance, entitlement, and disrespect had been laid bare in front of everyone. They lost not just wealth, but credibility, status, and the illusion that life could be handed to them without effort. And I, quietly, without drama, had reclaimed what was mine, protected what mattered, and restored the dignity that had been dismissed for far too long. The weeks that followed were quiet, almost serene. Tyler and Melissa retreated from the town's social circles, their influence diminished, their schemes exposed. Local gossip hummed like a low tide, whispering about their failed attempts to manipulate the estate. But I no longer paid attention. My focus was on preserving what had been earned, what had been built with decades of sweat, late nights, and unwavering commitment. I returned to my office at the shop, the familiar smell of oil, metal, and leather grounding me. Clients walked in, greeted me warmly, and trusted not just my skill, but my integrity. Some of them quietly expressed admiration for the way I had handled the estate, the will, and my children's betrayal. Their respect mattered more than any headline or whispered rumor. Harold, my accountant, stopped by one afternoon, eyes gleaming. "Robert, the trust is solid, the estate intact. You've done what most wouldn't dare. Tyler and Melissa are, well, they've been humbled." "It's done," I nodded, a faint smile touching my lips. "It's done, and that's enough." Walking through the Harris estate in the late afternoon, the sun casting gold and amber across the polished floors, I felt a profound sense of closure. Each room, each heirloom, each investment was a testament to persistence, sacrifice, and careful stewardship. This house wasn't just bricks and wood. It was a symbol of a life lived responsibly, honestly, and with dignity. I thought of my late wife, Sarah, and whispered softly, "We did it right. We preserved what mattered. We've honored the life we built together." Tyler eventually called me one evening. His voice was subdued, almost hesitant. "Dad, I know we failed. I see it now. I misjudged everything." I listened, not interrupting, letting the weight of his words sink. After a long pause, I spoke calmly. "Tyler, understanding comes with time. Respect and trust are earned, not demanded. Learn from this. Let it guide you in life. You may not have inherited the estate, but you can inherit the wisdom to not repeat these mistakes." He didn't argue. There was only the quiet acknowledgement of a man finally recognizing the consequences of arrogance and entitlement. Autumn settled over Chicago, painting the city in shades of amber and rust. I walked through the backyard of the Harris estate, the crisp air filling my lungs. The trees shed their leaves in a gentle cascade, and the quiet hum of life continued around me. The trucks in the driveway, the investments, the home, they all stood as a testament to perseverance. I breathed deeply, knowing that the estate, my legacy, and my dignity were secure. Tyler and Melissa had expected millions. They had expected control, influence, and ease. What they got instead was truth, accountability, and the bitter taste of lessons learned too late. And I had something far more valuable: peace, respect, and the satisfaction of justice served quietly, methodically, and impeccably. Sometimes justice doesn't roar. Sometimes it hums quietly, like the turning of a well-oiled engine or the rustle of leaves in autumn wind. In that quiet hum, I found closure. The estate was intact. The legacy was preserved, and for the first time in years, I could walk through the house, breathe the air, and know that my life's work, my sacrifices, my efforts, my integrity had not been in vain. Tell us your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories.